Welcome back to the third hour of Citizen Extra live on Citizen TV. My name is Wahiga Mwaura. Lots of interesting discussions during the break. I hope we'll be able to bring them to light in the course of the third hour, and I'll be coming to my panelists shortly to enable them to be able to do that. But for now, let me give you a hint of what is happening around the world. Even as we look at what's happening in Kenya, so many events happening around the world. Yesterday, police in Somalia were overwhelmed by thousands of demonstrators at the Mogadishu Stadium, the site where their loved ones were killed in Saturday's twin blast. While meanwhile, in Togo, protests, security forces in Lome yesterday used tear gas in response to protesters calling for an end to President Faure's family's 50-year control over Togo. These stories and so much more in our international roundup.
Police in Somalia were yesterday overwhelmed by thousands of demonstrators at Mogadishu Stadium, the site where their loved ones were killed in Saturday's twin blast. Police initially opened fire to prevent people from accessing the scene of attack, injuring at least 2 people. The twin bombing killed more than 300 people and injured more than 400 others. President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed addressed the demonstrators and called on Somalis to stand for defending the nation from the enemy. No group or individual has claimed responsibility of the attack. Still on protest, security forces in Lome yesterday used tear gas in response to protesters calling for an end to President Faure Gnassingbe's family 50-year control over Togo. Opposition parties had called for 2 days of anti-government protests, defying a government ban on weekday protests. Togo's opposition is calling for the resignation of President Faure, who has been in power for half a century, and advocating for the return of presidential term limits. The president had previously pledged to reintroduce the term limits that his father had scrapped. Elsewhere, members of the European Commission in Malta yesterday joined journalists for a candlelight vigil to commemorate a journalist killed by a car bomb. Daphne Galiza, Malta's best-known investigative journalist, was killed on Monday when a powerful bomb blew up her car. About 100 people gathered outside Brussels International Press Center to pay tribute to Galiza, who ran a hugely popular blog in which she highlighted cases of high-level corruption, majorly targeting politicians. Kawira Wakethenji, Citizen Extra.
A snapshot of what is happening around the world, several interesting events, some of them mirroring to some extent a bit of what is happening in our country, and bringing the big discussion on democracy. What is the future of democracy? Maybe that's a topic we should discuss here one day, but for now let's stick to what is in front of us and deal with that comprehensively. Stephen Leto is live from Bungoma, I believe, and we will be catching up with him shortly. That is where NASA have taken part of their campaigns, I believe, and of course we know that they had been invited for that 2:30 p.m. meeting. So of course Leto will engage us on exactly who is expected there, what is the plan, etc. shortly. But for now, let me give each of my panelists a chance to carry on with the discussion. Dr. Alutalala had given interesting thoughts. Simeha, I'll start with you, just to give you a chance to respond about the state of the nation, where we are, and of course the build-up to next week, the poll or no poll, depending on which side you support. I can give you a chance now to share your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Wahiga. First of all, yes, to comment on National Cohesion and Integration Commission and what Ole Kaparo has said a short while ago. I think, first of all, the setting of that commission in terms of what it ought to be doing, they just got it wrong ab initio. Because it's not about chasing, in my opinion, it's not about chasing around people who commit those offenses under the hate speech laws and so on. That the Director of Public Prosecutions and the police can effectively do. You only put in place something like this to cure a mischief. Okay. And indeed a mischief existed in our country, and we acknowledged it in 2008, that we are a divided nation. And if you look at the Agenda 4 items, part of it is historical injustices and so on and so forth. So this ought to have been a commission that looks at public policies, institutions and processes, and identify the weaknesses and propose remedies, and if you like, even let me use the word, compel the nation, particularly the political leadership, to address those gaps. But you leave the infrastructure that excludes other people as it is, and then you go chasing after guys who are insulting each other in the field, and you hope you'll bring about cohesion. Please, structure, the foundations that create the divisions in our nation are still firmly in place. Part of NASA's argument is, let's deal with exclusion. When we push this question of electoral injustice, that we must push for electoral justice, we have seen the injustice being designed to perpetuate those policies of exclusion, to ensure that only a certain group of people hold on to levers of state power, and therefore they give them advantage over other people, even on economic opportunities. So it's bigger than just a presidential race. And those are the things that a national cohesion and integration commission should have been looking at.
It was hoped that devolution would make the job of NCIC easier, because resources would then be spread to the counties, and each county could then decide on how to manage its affairs moving forward. In fact, we've seen examples like in the United States, where you find one county almost jealous of another county because, you know, depending on the leadership of particular counties, the decisions they made, progress happening. So the national government in many ways can no longer be blamed for certain things. So does that then say for us as Kenya that devolution still has a lot that needs to be done in terms of being worked on?
Look, a lot, Wahiga, and it's not the county governments to blame. These are the first, from 2013, those are the first county governments who are having.
And we saw reports even in the media that some governors have become
just a minute,
superstars in their counties.
I will deal with that. Let me deal with that just a minute.
Jetties and yachts and all that. But go ahead, sorry.
The only government we knew, the only government that was in place to, if you let me use this word that we really sometimes even misuse, to midwife devolution, was the national government. It was the institution of state in place from 2013 to ensure that it happens as contemplated in the Constitution. Unfortunately, from where I stand, we got into power people who opposed and still oppose devolution and make it extremely difficult for devolution to work. Still want to hold on to massive amounts of resources at the center.
Referring to the national government.
National government, the leadership of the national government. Give meager resources to county governments, and when bosses in the county government, this is governors and their chief executives and so on, commit serious crimes like serious offenses like corruption and plunder of resources, the national institutions that are responsible for taking these people to court, including, I'll tell you, then it was called governors, they do not. They simply, and it's like they were telling court, you punish your governors when they steal. Court doesn't have that power. It's director of, court can sanction, and it did sanction. For example, in Vihiga, it carried out an investigation, sanctioned, though the man was leaning towards court, but he wasn't court, that's a Karanga. But in Kisumu, it actually carried out an investigation and sanctioned. That is only as far as court could go. But in terms of criminal action, ensuring that these people are held accountable, those are institutions of national government. And then finally, just in terms of rolling out devolution, right now you would expect that, then we called it the transition authority, but now we have a committee. How many citizens even know that we have that kind of committee that is responsible for intergovernmental relations? It's as if we already finished the transition. My friend, we're only beginning. But the national government that's supposed to midwife that, to ensure, for example, the health sector is properly devolved, not just with the resources, sending some monies to the counties, but even holding the hands of the young county governments, insisting on certain minimum standards in the health sector, punishing and holding accountable those who plunder and those who commit other offenses that undermine devolution. They encouraged it along because it works for them politically.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Mark, I'll give you a chance to respond, but before that, let's cross over to Stephen Leto, live from Bungoma, where he is supposed just to give us a preview of what we can expect from the National Super Alliance today as they hold a rally there. I'd also seen a plan where they were to hold a rally in Turkana as well. Not quite sure if those plans have changed. Stephen Leto, what can you tell us about the National Super Alliance agenda plan for today and, of course, for the next couple of days as well?
Well, a very good morning to you, Wahiga Mwaura, there in studio. We are right in Bungoma County. This is Bungoma town, where the National Super Alliance is set to hold their rallies, a series of rallies, of course, across this particular county. They have scheduled about 5 stops today, starting with Webuye, Kimilili, Tongaren, as well as Kandui and Bungoma town, basically to sell what they began on Sunday in Mombasa, that is calling on their support supporters to boycott the upcoming repeat polls scheduled for next Thursday. The National Super Alliance, remember yesterday, Wahiga, they say that they will be staging demonstrations in their strongholds across the country, that is on election day, to ensure that voting does not take place in those parts and that their supporters do not go to the ballot and instead go to protest what they term as failure by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to set a conducive environment to prepare and deliver a free, fair and credible election on Thursday. But of course, yesterday, as you saw, the NASA principals there saying that putting it to the IEBC that as it is now, it cannot proceed. It has lost the confidence of the electorate and the country as a whole following the resignation of Commissioner Roslyn Akombe. And of course, sentiments that had been made by Wafula Chebukati, who is the chairman of the commission thereafter, that according to the National Super Alliance is just an indication of what is happening and what is bedeviling the electoral commission. But of course, they had set to visit this particular county. Remember, Bungoma County is one of their perceived strongholds that the Jubilee Party has been able to make a lot of inroads. In fact, as the National Super Alliance today crisscrosses across this county, we are told there were also plans by their opponents, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, to also do the same in Sirisia constituency. But that just telling you how the Jubilee Party is intent in ensuring that they get a good chunk of votes here. Interestingly, Wahiga, there are two sets of campaign going on here. One by the National Super Alliance telling the country to boycott the election, and another by the president-led brigade telling the country to go to the ballot. And so it's too conflicting. It's different from that was happening in the August 8, where all the camps were calling on their supporters to troop into the polling stations on election day. Like you put it, the National Super Alliance had also planned to visit Turkana County today. But as you know that this was supposed to be a tour that was to be split into two camps, one to be led by Raila Odinga and the other one to be led by his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka. But as of today, Kalonzo Musyoka has not yet jetted back from Germany, and so there is only one camp that is led by Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula, who will be in Bungoma County today. Remember, it's gearing to the Mashujaa Day celebrations in what the National Super Alliance is saying. It will be using that particular podium to celebrate and to honor those who lost their lives in the demonstrations that began 3 weeks ago. Wahiga.
Thank you so much, Stephen Leto, for that update. A quick question for you, though. We know that the IEBC was supposed to hold a consultative meeting with presidential candidates today. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to NASA about that meeting, whether they've given you their thoughts about why they have chosen not to attend it. We can assume that one of the reasons why it has been called off is because there was reluctance by certain parties to attend. We don't have exact details. Do you have any information from the National Super Alliance on that invitation by IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati?
Well, Wahiga, there has been a lot of issues over the meeting between presidential candidates and the IEBC. Remember, according to the National Super Alliance, what we've just been able to hear is that they're saying last time when they were invited by the same chairman of the commission, that is Wafula Chebukati, to the Bomas of Kenya, Raila Odinga and his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka went there. But they say, on the other hand, President Uhuru Kenyatta did not show up in that particular meeting, but instead sent his deputy, that is William Ruto. And so they're saying they do not see any difference that these particular discussions will make other than that will be different from what was discussed and what happened in the last meeting with the IEBC. But of course, we are told that some of the reasons also they had to cancel is that they couldn't call off their rallies today, that only less than 6 days to the next polls. And so they said that they have to come and make their public engagements first, saying that it will be a waste of time, sort of, to go and sit with a commission that they say will not prepare a free, fair and credible election for the next in the next remaining days. Wahiga.
Bungoma, and of course later on in our subsequent broadcast you'll be able to tell us what message the National Super Alliance had for residents of that particular part of the country, even as they are set to hold 5 rallies or so, as you just informed us a bit earlier on in the course of the day. We carry on with our discussion in studio, and Mark Bichati, I believe I was going to give you a chance now just to weigh in on the discussion that we're having. We're talking about bodies, commissions that are seemingly not independent. We're talking about devolution as well, and I can allow you also to now come in on that.
There are a number of things that are going a bit wonky with our country. The first thing is we are getting into a place where facts, figures and truth are relative based on whether you're in NASA or Jubilee. What has become our national values, again, are different based on whether you're in NASA or Jubilee. What we need to see from all these commissions is for them to practice the most important thing of any commission, which is independence, which is oversight. So what do? You need to move the conversation into a space of what does Kenya really want and what does Kenya really need. And there are very simple things. Number one, we want a country that can move on beyond political crisis. That's one. Whether you're in NASA or in Jubilee, we agree that as a nation, we need to get back to a functioning economy. We need to get back to a functioning town. You know, I am tired of planning my routes round town because I'm afraid of demonstrations. I'm afraid of suspending business because I don't know whether the NASA is going to demonstrate the whole day during the 26th and we won't have elections. These are the questions the Kenyans are saying we need to move on. We need to get to a place where our country is stable. Then we roll back. How do we do that? It's very simple. What we are seeing now is a situation we see every day in our highways. You're in a dual carriageway. Someone has decided to overtake, and when they decide to overtake, they decide to slow down. So you can't pass on the left or on the right. They're on the long lane, and if you tell them they're blocking you, they will insult you. This is the problem with this country. So what are we talking about? NASA does not want an election, okay, and they're going to demonstrate to stop an election. There's half of the country that wants to have an election. Where do the rights of the people who want to vote, where do they go, and where do the rights of the people who don't want to vote go? You know what?
Although in all fairness, NASA have not said that the demos are to stop.
No, they've not said that. But Wahiga, let me ask.
That's what you read as the.
Let's be honest. Which of us would let our children go to town when NASA says they are demonstrating?
Myself.
No, just wait. Let me finish.
You asked a question, so I've answered.
I didn't interrupt you.
He asked a question.
It's a rhetorical question.
The fact of the matter is this: there's a security concern every time we have demonstrations in this country, and that impact cannot be ignored. So that fact tells you that we have a presidential candidate or ex-presidential candidate who is hell-bent on stopping an election, and we have on the other side a presidential candidate who's equally hell-bent to have an election. Now, the fact of the matter is this: we need to get to a point where we decide how does Kenya move forward. The politics and the semantics of all this is Akombe is in NASA and she's in Jubilee and let's fight about that is absolute nonsense. What we need to do as a nation is we know how to hold an election. We hold an election, each agent signs, each returning officer signs, pass the correct results. As in, come on, we can hold elections in a class 1 classroom and we can spend 52 million plus 10 million now and still fail to hold an election. Are we incompetent as a nation, as a people? Surely.
I hope you're not expecting an answer from me. I hope that's a rhetorical question.
Yes, for me, my comments, I will start with the Kaparo Commission. I've known Kaparo for many years since he was a politician and now where he is sitting. And for me, I am surprised that he has no capacity to do his work and more so to steer the commission to take its position. Now, what has happened now, we have left the commission, IEBC, under the courts to deal with the political crisis. Really, the courts are the last place we want to go for a solution on political problems. What we are having now are not legal issues. Even going back to court to ask them what is the role of Chebukati in an election. Really, these are issues which are all can be solved in a political environment. This is where now Kaparo chips in as a politician. And I think he was given that job because of his experience as a politician. And his job is to bring cohesion among Kenyans, They have failed in doing that. That's why we are even hearing Honorable Mendiwo calling for secession. Why? Because Kenyans are not feeling like they belong to Kenya. Kaparo has simply failed with his team to bring cohesion in Kenya. Kenyans need to feel like they belong to Kenya so that they can start being patriotic and so that we can all take responsibility for whatever happens in our country. What we are seeing in IEBC, if it is true from what Akombe and Chebukati are saying, is we are seeing non-patriotic people working for us in that commission. They do not take their role and mandate under the Constitution seriously. They do not take their independence, which we have granted them through the Constitution, seriously. Then what we do, if that is not the case, we as Kenyans are the ones bearing the blunt of continued strikes, as he says. We cannot work properly, tensions all over. That means foreigners cannot invest in our country. Who is going to suffer at the end of the day? So for me, my call is on this commission, and especially commissions which have been put in place to address critical issues
IBC,
like cohesion, NCIC, to really take their role seriously. Why should Chebukati be the one calling candidates to dialogue on the way forward in the political crisis? That is the work of Kaparo, to call for cohesion. Why can't he talk with our President Uhuru? Why can't he talk with Raila to find out what practical solutions can be gotten in this political crisis to move forward? The issues Raila raises, they may be difficult to